My children booked a family dinner at the most exclusive restaurant in New York City, the Terrace, but when I arrived, there was no seat reserved for me. My daughter-in-law, Sarah, smirked with disdain and said maybe a cheaper diner would be better for me. I started laughing, a deep, raw laugh that came from the depths of my wounded soul. Everyone stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Then I walked over to the owner, James, my trusted business partner of 15 years, and asked for the best table available. His eyes lit up when he saw me. My children had no idea that the elegant restaurant where they just humiliated me was mine, that every plate served, every glass of wine poured, every cent they spent went straight to my bank account. I'm Margaret, 69 years old, and I've just uncovered the true faces of the children I sacrificed my entire life for. I was widowed at 30, left with 3 small children, Daniel, Michael, and my little Emily, who died of pneumonia because I couldn't afford a private hospital. From that day, I swore my children would never go without. For 40 years, I worked as a housekeeper in Chicago, washing, ironing, and cleaning other people's homes while my hands cracked and my back bent. For 40 years, I woke at 5 a.m. to make their breakfast before heading to work, while other mothers took their kids to parks or enjoyed family vacations. I scrubbed strangers' bathrooms while they relaxed, worked extra weekend shifts to pay for my kids' school trips, funded private university educations. Daniel studied business administration, Michael engineering, bought their first cars, paid deposits on their apartments, and threw lavish weddings. I gave them the life I never had, the life I dreamed of but sacrificed for them. Daniel graduated and landed a big job at a bank in New York. He married Sarah, a cold woman who, from the first day, saw me as a threat, as if I'd take something she considered hers. Michael followed his brother's lead, always weaker, always needing someone else to make decisions for him. 6 months ago, I officially retired, not because I had to, but because 15 years earlier, I'd stopped relying solely on my housekeeper's salary. They didn't know. Nobody did. I preferred they thought I was a poor, dependent old woman. It's better to see people's true colors when they believe you have nothing to offer. Last Tuesday, Sarah called with that fake, sugary voice she uses when she wants something. Margaret, dear mother-in-law, we've organized a family dinner to celebrate Daniel's promotion at the bank. It's at the Terrace in Manhattan, you know the place. Saturday at 8. Of course I knew it, better than she could ever imagine. I arrived on time, as always, dressed in my best clothes, which to them still screamed housekeeper. I approached their table, where Daniel, Sarah, Michael, and his girlfriend, Claire, were seated. There were 5 chairs, all occupied, none for me. Sorry, I said, I think there's a chair missing. Daniel looked up from his wine glass with that familiar expression, a mix of annoyance and shame that always appeared when I was around his friends or colleagues. Mom, he said, we thought maybe you'd be better off eating somewhere else. This restaurant is pretty exclusive. We didn't want you to feel uncomfortable. Sarah nodded, her smile not reaching her eyes. Exactly, Margaret, maybe a cheaper place would suit you better, something more appropriate for your situation. The words hit like slaps. Michael looked away, cowardly as always. Claire seemed uncomfortable but didn't dare contradict Sarah. The other guests lowered their heads, embarrassed by the spectacle. Then I started laughing, a soft chuckle that grew louder, deeper, until the entire restaurant fell silent, staring at me. Daniel watched with a mix of confusion and panic, as if he suddenly realized something was terribly wrong. Sarah frowned, clearly annoyed that her plan to humiliate me wasn't going as expected. I walked slowly to the reception, where James waited with that professional smile I knew so well. Excuse me, I said loudly enough for everyone to hear, I'd like the main table, the one in the center of the dining room. James nodded immediately. Of course, Mrs. Margaret, your usual table is ready. The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel's eyes widened like saucers, Sarah paled instantly, and Michael dropped his fork. Because what they didn't know, what they never bothered to ask, was that Margaret, the housekeeper, had secrets that could shatter their world of lies and appearances. 15 years ago, while they were busy building their perfect lives with the money I gave them, I started investing my savings, not in just anything, but in properties, businesses, Places like the Terrace, the exclusive restaurant where they just told me I didn't belong. But let's pause there. First, you need to understand who these people I call my children really are. Daniel, my firstborn, the one I carried through feverish nights when I couldn't afford a private doctor, now wears $2,000 suits and is ashamed to introduce me to his bank colleagues. Sarah, his wife, comes from a middle-class family that always thought itself better than it was. When she married Daniel, she thought she'd won the lottery, a successful man with a good job, properties. What she didn't know was that everything Daniel had came from his housekeeper mother, the deposit on their apartment, their first car, their European honeymoon. Michael, my baby, the sensitive one who cried when I came home late from work, is now a 35-year-old man who can't make a decision without his older brother's approval. His girlfriend, Claire, is sweet but weak, unable to stand up to Sarah when she decides to humiliate her mother-in-law. For years, I was the perfect future grandmother in their minds, the one who'd babysit for free, cook Sunday dinners, always be available when they needed me. But now that I'm retired, now that they think I'm not earning money, I've become a burden, a shame to hide. Last week, Daniel visited my modest Chicago apartment. "Mom," he said, "Sarah and I have been talking. We think it'd be better if you moved to a smaller place, something more affordable. We could help you find a nice, budget-friendly nursing home." A nursing home, after 40 years of sacrifices, after giving them everything I had and more, they wanted to tuck me away so they could live their lives without the inconvenience of a mother they deemed useless. Michael agreed, of course. "It's for your own good, Mom. You'll be around people your age, have activities, not be alone in that big apartment." What he didn't say was that the big apartment they thought was too much for me was the same one where I raised them, where I stayed up nights when they had fevers, where I cried silently after 16-hour workdays so they wouldn't hear me. That night, after they left, I sat in my kitchen and made a decision. If they wanted to treat me like a stranger, like I hadn't sacrificed my entire life for them, it was time they met the real Margaret, not the submissive housekeeper they took for granted for decades, but the woman who'd built an empire in secret while they thought she was a poor, helpless old lady. Because, dear children, while you spent the money I gave you, I invested the rest. While you built your lives of appearances, I built my future, one that included owning several businesses in New York City, including the Terrace where you just humiliated me. The look on Daniel's face when James personally escorted me to the main table was something I'll never forget. His eyes darted frantically between the manager and me, as if trying to solve an impossible puzzle. Sarah's arrogant smile was gone, replaced by a mix of confusion and growing terror. I sat at the best table, normally reserved for celebrities and politicians. James snapped his fingers, and 3 waiters appeared instantly. "The premium wine list, Mrs. Margaret?" he asked with the deference shown only to true owners. "Of course, James," I replied, "and bring a bottle of Chateau Margaux 2010 for their table, courtesy of the house." I pointed to where my children sat, their faces now reflecting absolute panic. Daniel stood and walked to my table, his steps shaky. "Mom," he whispered, "what's going on? Why do they know you so well? Why are they treating you like you're the owner?" "Because I am, Daniel," I said with a serene smile. "I'm the majority owner of the Terrace and have been for 15 years. Every time you've come here to celebrate your promotions, anniversaries, or professional achievements, you've been spending money in my restaurant. Every bottle of wine you drank, every gourmet dish you savored, went straight to my bank account." Daniel's face collapsed completely. "That's impossible," he stammered. You clean houses. You don't have money for something like this." "Oh, dear son," I replied, "your first mistake was assuming that because I cleaned houses, I was poor. Assuming that because I sacrificed for you, I was stupid." Sarah approached, stumbling, clearly in shock. "Margaret, how could you afford a restaurant like this? Where did you get so much money?" Her voice had lost all its former arrogance, now sounding small and scared. "It's simple, dear daughter-in-law," I said. "While you were spending the money I gave your husband, I was saving every cent I could. While you lived your lives of luxury thinking it was your natural right, I was investing in properties, in businesses, in the future you thought I didn't have. But this doesn't end here. Oh no, this is just the beginning. Because, you see, for all these years, I haven't just been a housekeeper, I've been a silent observer. I've seen how they treat me when they think they need something from me and how they treat me when they think I'm useless. 3 months ago, I lost my cleaning job because the company went bankrupt. I didn't tell them because I wanted to see their natural reaction. Would they offer help? Would they worry about my well-being? Would they even ask how I was surviving? Instead, they seized what they thought was my vulnerability to try to get rid of me. Daniel, do you remember our conversation last week? You suggested a nursing home, said it'd be better for me to be around people my age. What you were really saying was you wanted me out of your life because you no longer saw me as useful. Michael finally found the courage to approach our table. Mom, he stammered, we didn't mean to, we thought it'd be better for you. I cut him off with an icy stare. Michael, dear, for 40 years, I've known exactly what's best for me, working until I was exhausted so you could have everything you wanted, sacrificing my dreams so you could chase yours. But apparently, when it comes to deciding about my own life, I'm suddenly too senile to know what's good for me. James approached discreetly and whispered, Mrs. Margaret, there are reporters outside. Seems someone leaked that you're here. Perfect, I whispered back. Let them in. It's time the whole city knows who Margaret the housekeeper really is. Sarah's eyes filled with tears of pure panic. Margaret, please, she begged, don't make this public. Daniel could lose his job at the bank if this gets out. What, Sarah? I said. That you humiliated your mother-in-law in public? That you tried to kick her out of a restaurant she owns? That you treated her like a beggar after she funded your entire education and lifestyle? Don't worry, dear daughter-in-law, this is just the beginning. The reporters stormed into the restaurant like an avalanche, cameras flashing, microphones pointed at our table. Daniel tried to hide behind his napkin, but it was too late. Sarah covered her face, whispering desperately that this would ruin her social reputation. Michael just sat there, paralyzed, as he always did when things got complicated. Mrs. Margaret, a reporter shouted. Is it true you're the owner of the Terrace and other exclusive establishments in New York City? I stood up, with the dignity I'd lost through decades of silent humiliations. That's correct, I said. I've been the majority owner of this restaurant for 15 years. I also have investments in other businesses my children knew nothing about. But that's not the most interesting part of this story. Another journalist jumped in. We've been told that just minutes ago, your own children tried to kick you out of the restaurant, claiming you didn't belong in such an upscale place. My smile widened. Exactly. My children, for whom I sacrificed 40 years of my life, thought they had the right to humiliate me publicly in my own establishment. The cameras immediately turned to Daniel and Sarah. Sir, they asked Daniel, is it true you tried to kick your mother out of the restaurant? His face was completely red, a mix of shame and terror. We didn't know. It was a misunderstanding. It was no misunderstanding, I interrupted, my voice clear and firm. It was a calculated humiliation. They told me to find a cheaper place, more appropriate for my situation. They suggested McDonald's as a better fit for my social status, all in front of other diners to maximize my shame. The journalist's outrage was palpable. One turned directly to Sarah. Ma'am, what do you have to say about suggesting your mother-in-law, who apparently funded your family's lifestyle, should eat at McDonald's instead of joining you for a family dinner? Sarah stammered incoherently. It wasn't our intention. We thought she'd be more comfortable. Her words sounded pathetic, even to herself. I'd seen her use that same emotional manipulation tactic on me for years, but in front of the cameras, she was exposed as the cruel, calculating woman she truly was. But wait, there's more, I told the reporters. A week ago, these same children who humiliated me publicly came to my home to suggest I move to a nursing home. According to them, it'd be better for me to be around people my age instead of living alone in an apartment they deemed too big for a retired housekeeper. The cameras perfectly captured the horror on Michael's face. Mom, please, he begged, don't say that on TV. They'll think we're monsters. You are, I replied without hesitation. You're exactly that, monsters I created without realizing it by giving you everything without teaching you the value of sacrifice. A veteran journalist asked, Mrs. Margaret, how long have you been planning this revelation? The question made me smile bitterly. I didn't plan it. For years, I kept my investments secret because I wanted to protect my children from the envy and problems money can bring. I wanted them to build their own lives based on their merits, not my wealth. But when I lost my job 3 months ago and didn't tell them, when I watched how they reacted to thinking I was vulnerable, when I saw their first response was to try to get rid of me instead of offering support, I realized I'd raised 2 strangers, 2 people who only valued me for what I could give them, not for who I was. Daniel tried to approach me, probably to do some damage control, but James discreetly stepped in. He'd worked with me long enough to know this confrontation had been brewing for years, and he wasn't going to let anyone interrupt it. Ma'am, a reporter asked Sarah, did you know your mother-in-law had these properties and investments? Why do you think she never told you? Sarah looked to Daniel for help, but he was too busy dodging cameras. We always thought Margaret was just a housekeeper. She never told us she had money. Exactly, I confirmed. I never told them because I wanted to see who they really were when they thought I had nothing to offer. And now I know. Now I know the filial love I thought existed was actually economic dependence disguised as affection. A young journalist raised his microphone. Mrs. Margaret, what happens now with your family relationship? My response was clear and final, there is no family relationship to save. They made their choice when they decided to humiliate me publicly. I'm making mine now. As of this moment, Daniel and Michael are no longer my sons, and Sarah is no longer part of my family. The silence that followed was absolute. The cameras captured the exact moment 2 grown men realized they'd lost not only their mother but also the secret financial support that had sustained their lives for decades. The news went viral within hours. Videos of the restaurant confrontation circulated across social media with headlines like "Housekeeper reveals she's a millionaire after kids humiliate her" and "A mother's perfect revenge." The comments were merciless toward Daniel and Sarah. People were outraged by the level of cruelty shown to a mother who'd sacrificed everything for her children. The next day, Daniel got a call from his boss at the bank. They couldn't afford to have employees tied to public scandals of family mistreatment. His image was destroyed, and his position was untenable. He was suspended indefinitely while they evaluated his future at the company. Sarah faced even worse consequences. Her high society circle completely shunned her. The wives of Daniel's colleagues, who once invited her to lunches and exclusive charity events, now avoided her like she was radioactive. Her tennis club membership was revoked, and her name was scrubbed from the guest lists of New York City's most important charity galas. Meanwhile, I checked into the presidential suite of the most luxurious hotel in Manhattan, the same one where I'd once cleaned rooms as a housekeeper. From the 30th floor, overlooking the city, I planned my next moves with the precision of a military strategist. Michael tried calling, his voicemails pathetic. "Mom, please, forgive us. We didn't know what we were doing. We can fix this. We're family." But real family doesn't humiliate in public. Real family doesn't abandon you when they think you're useless. Real family doesn't suggest nursing homes as a solution to their own shame. My lawyer, Robert Johnson, arrived at the hotel Tuesday morning with a satisfied smile. "Margaret," he said, "I've reviewed all the documents you requested. Daniel and Michael are listed as beneficiaries of several of your investments and properties. The apartment Daniel lives in, the car he drives, even his savings account have your automatic monthly contributions they didn't know about." "Perfect," I replied. "Cancel all those benefits immediately. Let them stand on their own as the independent adults they claim to be." Robert nodded, clearly enjoying the case. "I've also looked into their personal finances. Without your secret contributions, Daniel won't sustain his lifestyle for 3 months. The apartment he lives in is in your name. Technically, he's just a tenant without a lease." That afternoon, Sarah showed up at the hotel, begging for an audience. I met her in the lobby, public, so she couldn't make a dramatic scene. "Margaret, please," she pleaded, tears streaming, "you have to understand our position. Daniel's going to lose his job. We have nowhere to live if you take the apartment. We have debts, commitments." "How interesting," I replied with icy calm. "When I lost my job 3 months ago, your first concern was how to get rid of me, not how to help me. When you thought I had no money, your reaction was public humiliation. Now that you know I have resources, you come with crocodile tears." Daniel appeared behind her, utterly defeated. "Mom," he murmured, "I know we made terrible mistakes, but we're your blood, your sons. You can't destroy our lives like this." My laugh echoed through the hotel lobby. "Destroy your lives?" Interesting choice of words. "I'm not destroying anything, I'm simply withdrawing the support you took for granted. You decided Margaret the housekeeper didn't deserve a seat at your table. Fine. Now you'll find out what life is like without Margaret the investor keeping your luxuries afloat from the shadows. You'll learn to live on your own resources, like I did for 40 years while supporting you." Sarah tried one last desperate tactic. "Margaret, if you make this public, if you take everything, you'll suffer too. People will think you're a cruel mother who abandons her children." My smile grew colder. "Dear Sarah, the world already knows exactly who abandoned whom. The videos are all over social media. The entire world saw you try to kick me out of my own restaurant. That night, from my suite, I called James to coordinate next steps. The media wanted exclusive interviews, TV producers were offering documentaries, and magazine editors wanted articles about how I built an empire as a housekeeper. But I had bigger plans. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about rebuilding my life without the emotional leeches who drained me for decades. It was about proving that a 69-year-old woman could start over and be more powerful than ever." The digital war began when Daniel and Sarah, desperate to save their reputations, posted a tearful Instagram video portraying themselves as victims of a vengeful, manipulative mother. Daniel claimed I'd hidden my wealth to control them psychologically, while Sarah sobbed about how a real mother would never abandon her children over a simple misunderstanding. The video racked up thousands of views in hours, but not the reaction they hoped for. The comments were brutal. People remembered the restaurant footage, my suggestion to eat at McDonald's as a more appropriate place for my class. Their attempt at victimhood only worsened their public image. But I had something they didn't know existed. For years, every time they visited my Chicago apartment, every time they made snide comments about my job or lifestyle, I'd recorded our conversations, not out of malice, but because my memory wasn't what it used to be, and I wanted to remember the important things my children said. I never imagined those recordings would become my most powerful weapon. With Robert's help, I started a YouTube channel at 69, titled The Truth Behind the Crocodile Tears. I posted the first video Thursday night, and by Friday morning, it had 500,000 views. The video played audio clips of Daniel calling me a financial burden, Sarah mocking my cheap clothes in front of her friends, and Michael suggesting it'd be better for everyone if I moved far away because my presence embarrassed them when they had important guests. The most devastating recording was from 3 weeks before the restaurant incident. Daniel had come to my apartment, supposedly to visit, but really to snoop through my drawers for bank statements, calculating how much it had cost to put me in a nursing home. In the audio, you could clearly hear him say that people my age often develop dementia, and families should control their resources before they're wasted. The public's reaction was immediate and devastating for my children. Margaret Justice became a global trending topic. Thousands shared their own stories of ungrateful children, sacrificed parents, and dysfunctional families. My story touched a universal nerve of familial pain. International media started calling, CNN wanted an exclusive interview, Univision offered a 1-hour special, Netflix proposed a documentary about my life. Suddenly, Margaret the housekeeper had become a global symbol of maternal dignity and generational justice. Meanwhile, the consequences for Daniel and Sarah multiplied exponentially. The bank issued a public statement cutting all ties with Daniel. They couldn't afford to be associated with someone who'd publicly humiliated his elderly mother. His firing became permanent. Sarah lost her part-time job at an art gallery. The elderly owners, a wealthy couple, were personally offended by her behavior toward me. Her high society friends completely excluded her, nobody returned her calls. Michael tried to distance himself publicly, posting a video apologizing and claiming he'd opposed mistreating me from the start. But I had recordings of him actively participating in discussions about sending me to a nursing home, laughing at my attempts to dress nicely for their family events. His apology video went viral for all the wrong reasons. People mocked him as a coward, throwing his siblings under the bus with blatant lies when audio evidence proved his complicity. Claire, his girlfriend, broke up with him after the scandal affected her teaching job. Parents didn't want their kids taught by someone tied to a family that mistreated the elderly. The social pressure became unbearable for her. Friday night, I got a desperate call from all three. They'd lost everything: jobs, relationships, reputations, social circles. They begged for a meeting to reach some kind of agreement, asking me to retract the recordings, make a joint video about family reconciliation, and stop the media campaign they claimed was destroying their lives. I agreed to meet Saturday at the Terrace, my restaurant, my territory, on my terms, not to reconcile, but to let them hear the conditions under which we could coexist without me continuing to expose their misdeeds publicly. They arrived punctual, physically and emotionally wrecked. Daniel had lost 20 pounds in a week. Sarah had deep circles under her eyes and had abandoned all pretenses of elegance. Michael was a ghost of himself. They sat across from me at the same table where, a week earlier, they'd tried to humiliate me. The irony was delicious. Now they were the ones who didn't fit in this exclusive place, looking out of place, uncomfortable, defeated. They had one last chance at redemption, but the conditions would be specific, humiliating, and non-negotiable. I looked at them, sitting there like scolded puppies, feeling a strange mix of power and sadness. These were the babies I'd carried in my arms, the children I'd read bedtime stories to, the teenagers I'd worked double shifts to indulge. Now they were strangers begging for mercy from the woman they'd tried to destroy. "All right," I said calmly, "you'll listen to my conditions without interrupting. First, you'll make a public apology video, specifically acknowledging every action you took, why it was wrong, and why you deserve the consequences you're facing. No vague apologies, no euphemisms, you'll spell it out exactly." Daniel opened his mouth to protest, but I stopped him with a look. "Second, you'll repay every cent I've invested in your lives over the last 20 years, the apartment, the cars, the weddings, the universities, the vacations. My lawyer has calculated the total with interest, $800,000. Sarah's face crumpled. "Margaret, that's impossible," she whispered. "We don't have that money." "Of course you don't," I replied, "because you never learned to earn it. You lived like parasites off my sacrifices for decades. Third, you'll work to pay off that debt. I have businesses that need cleaning staff, maintenance workers, kitchen help. You'll start at the bottom, earning minimum wage." Michael finally found his voice. "Mom, you can't make us work as housekeepers? As what I was for 40 years to keep you fed." I finished for him. "Exactly. You'll learn what it means to wake up at 5 a.m., work until your hands ache, and come home with no energy for anything else. Fourth, you'll live in the same kind of building where I raised you, small apartments in working-class Chicago neighborhoods, using public transit. You'll experience the exact living conditions I had while you enjoyed luxuries paid for with my sweat." Sarah began sobbing uncontrollably. "This is pure revenge," she cried. "This is cruelty." "No, dear," I replied, "this is justice. Revenge would be leaving you on the street with no chance to redeem yourselves. I'm giving you the opportunity to earn my forgiveness, but you'll do it the hard way. Fifth, you'll attend mandatory family therapy, not to reconcile immediately, but to understand the depth of the damage you caused. Sixth, you'll do community service at nursing homes, caring for people my age who were abandoned by their families, so you understand exactly what you tried to turn me into." Daniel tried to negotiate. "Mom, let's be reasonable. We can't meet all these conditions. It's too extreme." My laugh echoed through the restaurant. Extreme was suggesting McDonald's when I came to dine with my family. Extreme was planning to put me in a nursing home without consulting me. Extreme was humiliating me publicly in my own restaurant. 7th, I continued relentlessly, you'll sign legal documents renouncing any claim to my assets when I die. My fortune will go to charities that actually help working mothers and abandoned elderly. The silence was absolute. The three of them exchanged glances, mentally calculating if they had any options left. They were right to be terrified. Without my secret financial support, without jobs, without social circles, they faced total ruin. 8th, I said, if any of you try to manipulate this situation, leak information to the media to play the victim, or break any of these conditions, I'll release the rest of the recordings I have, and trust me, there's enough material to destroy any chance of public redemption you might have. Sarah looked up, her eyes desperate. How long would we have to do all this? Until I decide you've learned your lesson, I replied. It could be months, it could be years. It depends on you proving to me you've truly changed, not just faking remorse out of desperation. 9th, you'll move immediately, this week. Robert already has lease contracts ready for your new apartments. They're modest but decent, like where I lived when you were kids. You'll learn to live on tight budgets, to value every dollar you earn. 10th and final, you'll work 6 days a week in my businesses under managers who report directly to me. You'll get no special treatment for being my children. In fact, you'll be evaluated more strictly than any other employee. Michael asked, his voice breaking, and if we do all this, will you forgive us? Can we be a family again? I looked at him steadily before answering. I don't know, Michael. Forgiveness can't be guaranteed, it's earned day by day with consistent actions, real humility, deep character change. You destroyed something that took decades to build. Rebuilding it, if it's possible, will take a long time. Daniel asked what they were all thinking, and if we refuse these conditions? My smile was ice cold. Then I continue the media campaign. I release the rest of the recordings, videos of you mocking my clothes, laughing at my attempts to fit into your social world, planning how to get rid of me. Trust me, there's enough material to keep this scandal alive for years. The three of them looked at each other again. They had no choice, and they knew it. It was accept my conditions or face total ruin with no chance of redemption. After 2 hours of tense silence, Daniel spoke first. We accept, he murmured, his voice broken. We accept all your conditions. Sarah and Michael nodded, defeated. They had no alternative. Robert, who'd been waiting at a nearby table, approached with the contracts already prepared. Every clause was detailed, every condition legally specified, there'd be no room for misunderstandings or manipulation. They signed with trembling hands, sealing their fate for the years ahead. Monday morning, their new lives began. Daniel was assigned to the cleaning crew at my corporate offices in Manhattan. The man who, a week earlier, wore $2,000 suits now donned a blue janitor's uniform, carrying cleaning supplies. His former bank colleagues saw him mopping the lobby floors, and the humiliation in his eyes was visible from across the street. Sarah was sent to work in the terrace's kitchen, the same restaurant where she'd humiliated me. She started washing dishes, peeling vegetables, scrubbing grease from grills. Her hands, once accustomed to expensive creams and weekly manicures, now cracked from industrial detergent and got cut by kitchen knives. Michael was assigned to maintenance at my real estate properties, fixing pipes, painting walls, trimming lawns. The physical labor left him exhausted by day's end. For the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to earn money with the sweat of his brow. The first weeks were brutal. Their bodies weren't used to intense physical work. Daniel complained of back pain from bending over to clean floors. Sarah cried in secret over burns from hot oil on her arms. Michael developed calluses on hands that had only known computer keyboards. But the hardest part wasn't the physical labor, it was the constant social humiliation. Terrace customers recognized Sarah from the viral videos, some snapping photos as she scrubbed pots. The images circulated online with mocking comments about how far the woman who thought herself too elegant for her mother-in-law had fallen. Daniel faced morbid curiosity from former colleagues, some passed by the building just to see him mopping, confirming that the once successful banker was now a janitor. His photos appeared in WhatsApp groups with captions like, "Look how the guy who kicked his mom out of the restaurant ended up." Meanwhile, I moved into a mansion in Manhattan's Upper East Side, a property I bought years ago but never lived in to maintain my poor housekeeper facade. Now, free from pretending, I could live openly according to my true means. The house had 10 bedrooms, sprawling gardens, a pool, and a panoramic city view, everything I'd dreamed of during those decades in small apartments, cleaning other people's homes. For the first time in 40 years, I had housekeepers working for me instead of being the one working for others. I hired Jane, a 50-year-old woman who'd lost her job during the pandemic and needed a chance. Unlike how my children treated me, I treated her with respect, paid her a fair salary, gave her medical benefits, and provided a comfortable room on the property. I wanted to show that economic power didn't have to turn people into heartless monsters. My TV interviews continued to make waves. I appeared on Oprah, Ellen, and CNN specials. My story inspired millions of older women who felt invisible or devalued by their families. I received thousands of letters from women sharing their own stories of unrecognized maternal sacrifice. I founded a nonprofit called Invisible Mothers, offering legal and financial support to elderly women facing family abandonment or economic abuse by their adult children. The response was overwhelming. My situation was far more common than society wanted to admit. After 2 months of grueling work, my children requested a meeting, claiming they'd changed and learned their lesson. I received them in my mansion's grand living room, overlooking the garden. It was important they saw the contrast between my new, prosperous life and the modest conditions they now lived in. They arrived exhausted, hands calloused, work clothes stained, with a humility I'd never seen in them. Daniel spoke first. "Mom, these 2 months have been the hardest of our lives. We've understood what your work meant, the sacrifice you made for us. We never truly valued it." Sarah, with genuine tears this time, added, "Margaret, I know I was cruel to you. I treated you like you were less than us. Now that I'm working in the kitchen, seeing how hard that job is, I understand I should never have belittled what you did." Michael, the most broken of the three, could barely speak. "Mom, forgive me. I was a coward who failed you when you needed me most. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, but I want you to know I work every day thinking about how to repair the damage I caused." I listened in silence, weighing whether their words were sincere or just another desperate manipulation. Time would tell. 6 months later, something had genuinely changed, not just the physical toll of hard work, but a deeper transformation in their character. Daniel had developed real humility. When cleaning offices, he greeted everyone respectfully, from executives to security guards, learning that honest work, no matter the kind, deserved dignity. Sarah became one of the terrace's most dedicated employees. The chefs respected her because she never complained, arrived early, and stayed until everything was spotless. She'd learned to value every dollar she earned, knowing exactly how much effort it took. Michael discovered an unexpected calling in maintenance. He found he had manual skills he'd never developed and genuine satisfaction in fixing broken things. His coworkers respected him because he didn't act superior despite his college degree. But the most significant change came from their community service at nursing homes. Seeing people my age abandoned by their families held up a painful mirror to what they'd nearly done to me. Daniel told me, tears in his eyes, about a 70-year-old man, Mr. Isaac, who waited for visits that never came, about a woman, Mrs. Esther, who kept photos of children who hadn't called in years. One Sunday afternoon, I got an unexpected call from the nursing home's director. "Mrs. Margaret," she said, "I have to tell you something extraordinary. Your children have informally adopted several of our residents. Daniel comes on weekends to play chess with Mr. Isaac, who hasn't had visitors in 3 years. Sarah teaches cooking to Mrs. Esther, who was deeply depressed. Michael fixes residents' personal items without being asked." That news moved me more than I expected. It wasn't an act to impress me, they thought I wouldn't find out. It was a genuine change born from experiencing the abandonment of the elderly firsthand. 8 months after the restaurant incident, I did something I hadn't planned. I invited them to dinner at my new home, not at the terrace, not on neutral ground, but in my home. When they arrived, I noticed how they'd changed physically, thinner but stronger, skin weathered from outdoor work, hands calloused but steady. Jane prepared a simple but delicious meal. During dinner, we talked as we hadn't in years, about their jobs, the people they'd met, the lessons they'd learned. There were no pretenses, no lies, just real conversations between real people. Daniel apologized again, but this time it was different. "Mom," he said, "I'm not asking for forgiveness because I need your money or want my old life back. I'm asking because I finally understand the damage I caused you, how I stole the dignity you earned through 40 years of sacrifice." Sarah added something surprising, "Margaret, I've been thinking about changing my career. I want to study culinary arts formally. Working in your restaurant's kitchen showed me a passion I didn't know I had. I don't want to be the superficial woman I was before." Michael was the most honest. "Mom, I know I may never fully regain your trust, but these months have been the first in my adult life where I feel proud of who I am. Honest work has given me self-esteem I never had when I lived off your money." At the end of the dinner, I made a decision I'd been mulling over for weeks. I told them they could stop working in my businesses if they wanted. They'd only served 8 of the 12 months I'd set, but their transformation was evident. To my surprise, all 3 asked to continue. Daniel wanted to keep working as a janitor until he completed the full year. Sarah asked to stay in the terrace's kitchen while studying culinary arts. Michael wanted to continue maintenance because he'd found his true calling. A year after the incident that changed our lives forever, we had a real family dinner at the terrace, but in the kitchen, not the fancy dining room. Sarah cooked for us, Michael had repaired the table we ate at, and Daniel had cleaned every surface until it shone. It wasn't a magical, complete reconciliation, deep wounds take time to heal, but it was a genuine start. For the first time in decades, I was dining with people who valued me for who I was, not what I could give them. That night, driving back to my mansion, I reflected on the past year. I'd lost children who were really strangers but found real people worth knowing. I'd lost emotional parasites but gained a family that had earned the right to exist. I didn't regret raising them, only that I hadn't realized sooner that kindness shouldn't come at the cost of self-destruction, that real maternal love sometimes requires teaching painful lessons to create worthy human beings. At 70, I learned it's never too late to demand the respect you deserve. 5 years have passed since that night that changed our lives forever. Today, as I write these lines from my study overlooking the garden I love, I can say with certainty that the hardest decision of my life was also the most liberating. Daniel never returned to banking. After completing his year as a janitor, he studied hospitality management and now runs 2 of my smaller properties, not because I gave them to him, but because he earned them, working his way up, learning every aspect of the business. His employees respect him because he knows exactly what each job entails. He divorced Sarah 2 years ago, not out of spite, but because they'd grown into different people. She found her passion in cooking, and he discovered he valued simplicity over social appearances. It was an amicable split between 2 people who'd grown in different directions. Sarah graduated as a professional chef and is now the terrace's executive chef. Her transformation has been the most dramatic. The woman who once mocked my clothes now proudly wears her sweat-stained kitchen uniform, her dishes earning national recognition. Several top restaurants have offered her better-paying jobs, but she chooses to stay where she learned the true value of work. She married one of the restaurant's suppliers, a simple man who appreciates her dedication and redemption story. They have a young daughter, Hope, my first real granddaughter, not because she's the first biologically, but because she's the first born into a family that understands the value of genuine relationships. Michael found his soulmate in Carla, a social worker he met while volunteering at a nursing home. They married last year in a simple but love-filled ceremony. Together, they started a maintenance company specializing in adapting homes for the elderly. Their work gives them purpose and enough income to live with dignity. I now have 3 more grandchildren, Michael and Carla's 2-year-old twins, who fill my home with laughter on Sundays when they visit for lunch. Seeing Michael as a father has shown me the man he always could have been, but circumstances never allowed him to develop. My foundation, Invisible Mothers, has expanded internationally, with offices in 12 countries, helping over 10,000 elderly women reclaim their dignity and rights. The case I'm proudest of is an 80-year-old woman in Chicago whose sons had her involuntarily committed to take her house. Our lawyers not only recovered her property but set a legal precedent protecting other elderly people in similar situations. I've written 3 books about my experience. The first, The Invisible Housekeeper, became an international bestseller and was adapted into a Netflix series. The story's rights have generated millions, all going to the foundation. It's ironic that my humiliation became a source of dignity for thousands of other women. Jane, my housekeeper, has become more than that. She's my housemate, my confidant, my chosen family. When her grandchildren visit, my home fills with a joy I never felt when my own children were young, because this is a relationship built on mutual respect, not obligation or guilt. At 74, my health is excellent. I do yoga every morning in my garden, swim in my pool, and travel frequently, giving talks on dignity in old age and healthy family relationships. I have more energy now than when I was a housekeeper because I finally live for myself, not just for others. My children and I dine together once a month, not out of obligation, but because we genuinely enjoy each other's company. Our conversations are real, our laughter sincere, our love earned, not taken for granted. When Hope calls me Grandma Maggie with that smile that lights up the room, I feel a connection I never had with the abstract idea of being a grandmother. The terrace, where it all began, has become a symbol of second chances. We have a policy of hiring people who faced hardships, single mothers, elderly workers who lost jobs, ex-convicts seeking reintegration. The terrace isn't just a thriving business, it's a community of people who understand the value of earned dignity. James, my trusted partner, retired last year. At his farewell party, he said something I'll never forget. Margaret, in 15 years of working with you, I never saw the poor housekeeper you pretended to be. I always saw the brilliant entrepreneur you really were. I was just waiting for you to see her too. I've fully forgiven my children, not because I've forgotten what happened, but because they chose to change, worked to earn that forgiveness, and became people worthy of my love and respect. Forgiveness wasn't a free gift, it was the result of years of their genuine effort. My lawyers have suggested amending my will to include my children again. I've decided to leave them a small portion of my fortune, but the majority will go to the foundation. They've learned to live on their own resources, and that independence has made them stronger. This morning, as I had breakfast on my terrace, I reflected on the question every journalist asks: do I regret taking such drastic measures? The answer is still no. Sometimes, real love requires decisions that seem cruel but are necessary for growth. I don't regret raising them, only that I didn't realize sooner that kindness shouldn't come at the cost of self-destruction, that respect isn't automatically owed for being a mother, it's earned through consistent actions. It's never too late to demand the dignity you deserve. To new mothers, I always say, love your children enough to teach them that relationships require reciprocity, that love without respect is manipulation in disguise, and that your value as a person doesn't depend on how much you're willing to sacrifice. Today, I am a complete woman, not just a sacrificial mother.